I built this app that can replace any accountant using just Lovable N8N. And in this video I will show you how you can build it step by step. First, we're going to build a clean and professional looking interface with an app like Lovable. Next, we're going to build our backend automation in N8N and connect it with our front-end interface. And once we have done that, I will show you how you can go about selling an app like this to accountants for thousands of dollars. So if that sounds interesting, let's get started. Now the app that we're going to build is going to automate invoice creation, which is a task that accountants spend a lot of hours on, and it's also going to automatically generate a brand new analysis every week and email it over to us. So to do that, first we have to go over to lovable.dev and build the front-end interface of our app. So to do that, I will come over here and I will type this long prompt. Now do not get worried guys, because along with the JSON for the full automation is actually going to be in my free school community underneath this video, which I have left a link for in the description below, so make sure you actually go and join and you will be able to find this full prompt. But basically what I'm telling Lovable is that I want to build an AI accountant app. Specifically, I want the accountant to be able to fill in the following information about his client. And over here I specify what information I want him to fill. I say the customer name, the issue date, the due date, the product description, the quantity, the unit price, and a bunch of other parameters, which are basically required in order for us to generate an actual invoice. And then I also say the system will also auto-generate these parameters. And then I also give it some parameters over here. Again, you can join the school community and you will find this full prompt inside there. And then I say, then the app will go and generate the invoice. But I specifically told Lovable that I shouldn't worry about the invoice generation part, because we're going to do that with the backend automation that we're going to build over in N8N. I just simply tell it to just focus on building a nice looking front-end UI and generate all the fields that I gave you before, which are these fields over here that I said specifically that the system needs to auto-generate ID or an invoice number, since we don't want the accountant to also have to fill in an invoice ID or an invoice number, etc, etc. We basically want the system to generate these things automatically for us. And then I say, you just focus on building a nice looking front-end UI. And then I say, make the UI look modern with nice sharp colors, just like this one. And now what I will do guys, I will go over to Google and search for a nice looking UI, simply find one that I like. Let's say I really like this one for example, and then all I have to do is to simply come over here, download it, and then I can come back over to Lovable, click on attach file, upload the UI I just downloaded, and then simply come over here, click on enter. This way Lovable also has a visual example of exactly how I want the app to look like, making it way more likely to give me a good end result. But while Lovable is building the front-end interface of our app, let's go over to N8N and start building the backend. Alright, so I went over to N8N and created a brand new workflow, and now the first thing that we have to do is to add in our trigger. And how we're able to do that is by coming over here and clicking on add first step, and then what we have to do is to come over here and search for a webhook. And the reason we're using a webhook and not any other trigger is because a webhook allows us to connect the front-end interface we're building right now with Lovable with the backend automation we're going to build over in N8N. And as you can see, we have these settings over here where the only change we need to make is we need to come over here in the HTTP method and change it from get over to post, since that is the type of request we need to use in order for us to be able to send and receive data from Lovable. So just come over here and make this change, and then simply come over here and click on top of this test URL in order for you to copy it in your clipboard. And then if we come back over to Lovable, we can see that it also finished creating the app, and you can see that this does look very good guys, and that's because we gave it a visual example over here, so Lovable knew exactly what we wanted. But this isn't the reason we came back over to Lovable, we came back to connect it with the backend automation we're building in N8N. So to do that, I will simply come over here in the Ask Lovable tab, type send all the data over to this webhook URL. And now what I will do is I will simply paste in the webhook URL I just copied. And then I will also say, make sure you send them in separate schemas and not all in one big block of text. And then I will simply come over here and click on enter. And the reason I said the last part is because if we don't tell it to send it a separate schemas, it's going to send us one massive schema that is going to include all of this data, which is definitely not what we want. That's why I specifically told it to not do that. And now all you have to do is to wait till Lovable is done embedding a webhook URL inside that app, and boom, as you can see, Lovable finish embedding the webhook URL, which means that we can actually go and test it out. So I will simply come over here and fill all this information in, just like an accountant would do when he was generating an invoice. And once we fill all this information in, then all we have to do is to scroll down here, but before we're able to come over here and click on generate invoice, we have to come back over in our N8N workflow and actually make sure our webhook is listening and is expecting to receive data, and then we can come back over to Lovable and click on generate invoice. And boom, as you can see, the request was sent over to N8N, and if we come back over in our N8N workflow, we can see that this webhook did in fact execute, and we do have an output over here, which is exactly what we wanted. And if I actually scroll all the way down here, I can see all the data that I inputted over in our Lovable interface being displayed over here in separate schemas as well, since we specifically told Lovable to send it in separate schemas. So now that we have successfully managed to get all this data inside Lovable, it's time to go and build the rest of our automation. But first I will actually come over here and pin this data, so do not have to rerun this if something goes wrong, and now we can move on with building the rest of our automation. Now the first thing that we should do is input all of this data somewhere so we can actually store it if we want to review it later on, which basically means input it inside a CRM. Now for this video, I will actually go with Google Sheet, and specifically I want to input all of this data in this Google Sheet that I have created over here. As you can see, it has the same exact columns with the ones that we filled in Lovable, and I will actually come over here and I'm going to name it data, so we know exactly which Google Sheet this is. So now if I come back over to N8N, all I have to do to input this data inside the Google Sheet is simply come over here, click on the plus icon, and search for Google Sheets, and then simply come over here and select append row in sheet. So once we make the selection, simply come over here, select your Google Sheets credentials. I will select mine, and then over here in the document, simply come over here and select the Google Sheet you want to input all of this data to. Since our Google Sheet is called data, I will simply select it from over here, and then you have to come over here, select the sheet number. I will select sheet number 1, and then we basically need to input all the data that we have over here inside our Google Sheet. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. So for the invoice ID, I will find the invoice ID schema and drag and drop it over here. For the invoice number, I'm going to do for the customer ID exactly the same. For the customer name, again the same. And I think you get the point. Basically, drag and drop in the schema that includes the variable that you want. Same with product ID, same with product description. And that is exactly what I did for all the parameters that we have over here. So now if I simply come over here and execute the step, you can see that we do have an output, which means that we successfully managed to input all of this data inside our Google Sheet over here, and you can see because we just created this brand new line over here. So now it's time we actually go and start creating our invoice. So let's say you have an invoice template inside your Google Docs, similar to this. Now if you want this specific template, it will again be inside the school community in the description below, so you can access it immediately if you want. Now to get this template inside N8N, what we need to do is to simply come over here, click on the plus icon and search for Google Docs, and then we need to come over here and select get a document, since that's what we actually need to do. Now the first thing you have to do is to come over here, select your Google Docs credentials, and then we need to fill in the doc ID or URL, which we're going to find by coming back over in our Google Doc, clicking on the share button over here, and make sure you actually change this from restricted to anyone with a link. Then simply click on copy link and then click on done. And then if we come back over to N8N and we paste in the link and we click on execute step, we will be able to retrieve the information that is inside the template over here in the content schema, as you can see. So now that we have the template inside N8N, what we need to do is to actually go and fill it in. So to do that, we have to come over here, click on the plus icon and add in an AI model. Now I will personally choose to go with OpenAI, but you can obviously go with any LLM that you want, and then I will simply come over here, select message model. Now the first thing you need to do is to come over here and select your OpenAI credentials. Now if you do not have credentials, simply come over here, click on create new credentials, and then you simply need to input your API key. Now to find your API key, you need to go over to platform/openai/keys. I will leave a link for in the description below as well. And then simply come over here, click on create new secret key, then simply give it a name. I will name it Damian, for example, and then I will come over here, click on create secret key, and boom, this is our brand new API key. So all we have to do is to simply come over here and copy it. So all we have to do now is to simply come over here and paste in our API key, and then come over here, click on save, and boom, as you can see, our credentials were successfully saved, which means that we can close this off, and then we can simply come over here and select our credentials. Then for the model, I will personally go with GPT-4. You can obviously select any LLM model that you want, but the main part of this node is the system prompt, where we basically need to tell the AI exactly what we want it to do. So to do that, I will come over here and turn this into an expression and open this up so you guys can take a better look at it. And I will type, fill this invoice template with these details. And the first thing I will do is I will actually take the content schema that includes the invoice template and drag and drop it over here. And then what we need to do is to give it access to our personal details that we inputted inside our Lovable interface. And to do that, we simply have to come over here, open up the webhook, scroll all the way down here to where we have all of our personal details over here. And what you can do is drag and drop each one of them separately, or you can even take in the object that they're inside and drag and drop it over here. But as you can see, the LLM model cannot actually read this parameter. And that is because we actually need to take this exactly as it is and actually stringify it. And a very easy way to do it is by coming over here in the AI assistant, simply pasting the schema and say stringify this. And boom, it gives you this JSON code. So simply copy it and you simply come over here, you delete this, and if you paste it in, then you can see that the LLM model can now look at the content that is inside this object. And just to make your life easier, I would actually advise you to use the body object, which includes basically everything. So what I'm going to do is I will simply paste this in, come over here again, paste it in and say stringify this, and simply click on enter, and boom, it gave me this source number of code. So all I have to do is to come over here, delete this, paste this in, and as you can see, the LLM model has access to all of this information right now, which is exactly what we wanted. And then I simply tell it, just give me the final result, don't give me anything else. So now all I will do is I will simply close this off, execute the step, and boom, as you can see, the LLM model filled in our invoice template over here with the actual information that we inputted inside our Lovable interface. And now what we have to do is to input this inside a Google Doc so we can actually have it saved somewhere. So to do that, I will come over here and I will again search for Google Docs. I will simply click on it and then I will come over here, select create the document, since we first need to create a brand new document and then we can insert this invoice inside it. So again, come over here, select your Google Docs credentials, then over here in the folder name, simply select the folder that you want your brand new Google Doc to be created. I will select this one, and then for the title, what you can do is simply say invoice for, and then I will turn this into an expression. I will come over here in the webhook, I will find my customer's name, and then I will also input the issue date so we know exactly which invoice this is. And then if I come over here and execute the step, you can see that this did in fact create a brand new Google Doc that is called invoice for Damian and also includes the date of the invoice. So now all we have to do is to simply input the invoice that was just generated inside this brand new Google Doc. So to do that, we have to again come over here, search for Google Docs, but this time we will select the update the document option. Again, select your Google Docs credentials, and then over here in the doc ID or URL, come over here, take in the Google Doc ID that you have from the created document node and simply drag and drop it over here. Then you basically leave all these options exactly as they are, and then over here in the text, simply turn this into an expression, open up our LLM's message, and then simply take in the content and drag and drop it over here. Which means that if we now come over here and execute the step, this executes successfully and it filled in our invoice template inside the Google Doc. And now, since most invoices are actually in PDF format, we need to take this Google Doc and turn it into a PDF. So to do that, we simply have to come over here, click on the plus icon and search for Google Drive, and then we have to come over here and select download file. Now simply come over here and select your Google Drive credentials. Operation will leave this on download, and then over here where it says select a file, what we need to do is to actually change this where it says from list to by ID, since we have a unique document ID over here. So all we have to do is to simply take it and drag and drop it over here so it knows to download this exact file. And then we simply need to come over here, click on add option, and we need to enable Google Drive file conversion, and then we simply click on add conversion, and we need to change this from HTML over to PDF. So now that we have done that, if we come over here and we execute the step, you can see that we successfully managed to download this invoice in a PDF format, as you can see over here. And now we can basically do whatever we want with this PDF. We can upload it to Google Drive, and we can also automatically email it to our client. Now for this example, I will actually choose to email it to our client. So I will simply come over here and search for Gmail. I will simply select it, and then I will come over here and select send a message. Then simply come over here and select your Gmail credentials. And then I will come over here, I will open up my schema, and then over here in the 2, I think I haven't actually inputted my client's email if I remember correctly. Yes, I haven't, but you ideally actually would add in another option in your Lovable interface where the accountant would be able to input his client's email, and I will actually make the change in the prompt and have it inside the school community. So if you're going to use that file, it will be exactly as I'm talking about right here, but for now let me just input my personal email. Obviously you would input the email of your client over here. Then for your subject you can type in whatever you want. You can type something like invoice, and then also turn this into an expression and drag and drop in the issue date. And then for the email type we can change this to text, and for the message what we can do is we can say something like hello and the client's name, which is over here. Here is your invoice. And we can obviously significantly improve this copy. I'm just writing this for demonstration purposes. And then all you would have to do is to simply come over here, click on add option, click on attachments, and then click on add attachment, and simply make sure the name inside the attachment field matches the name of your binary file, which it does right now because it's called data. And the only other change I would tell you to make is to click on add option, click on append N8N attribution, and actually turn this off, since we don't want this annoying message that says all this email was sent by N8N, and we want to avoid this. That's why I would actually strongly advise you to turn this off. So now if I actually come and execute the step, you can see that we did successfully send over that email. And if I go over in my email, we can see that we did in fact send the email. That also includes the invoice that we just generated. Now you can obviously improve the way this looks exactly as you want. I just made this as a simple example just to show you what's possible, and I will also play around with it a little bit to actually improve it and input the improved version inside the community. But now we're basically done with the first part of our automation, and what is left is to go and build the second part of our automation, which is another task that a lot of accountants spend a lot of hours on every week, which is analyzing all of their invoices and gathering meaningful insights from them, which I think you can imagine if they have like thousands of invoices, this would take a significant amount of time. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go and automate this whole process using N8N and the power of AI. Now to do that, the first thing that we need to do is to come over here, click on the plus icon and search for a scheduled trigger node, because we want to make this run every week or so. That's why I will come over here and select weeks, and I will make it run, for example, every Monday, so we have fresh insights every Monday for the invoices of the previous week to see what we can improve on, what we did right, what are the trends, etc, etc, so the accountants can make correct business decisions. So after we have added the scheduled trigger node over here, what we have to do is to retrieve the information for the invoices that we have from the past week. So to do that, I will come over here and I will search for Google Sheets, because if you remember, we uploaded all the information that we have for all of our invoices inside Google Sheets. So I will simply come over here and select it, and then I will come over here and select Get Rows in Sheet. Then I will simply come over here, select my Google Sheets credentials. On operation, I will leave this on Get Rows, since that's what we actually want to do. And then over here, I will select the Google Sheet that has all of the information that we need, and then over here I will select the Google Sheet number. But if I actually come over here and execute the step, you will see that this does successfully retrieve all the information that is inside a Google Sheets, but that's not what we actually want, because we want to retrieve the information from the invoices that we did in the previous week. We don't want information from invoices that we did 1 year ago, let's say, because we solely want to analyze the previous week. So to circumvent that, what we need to do is to come over here, click on Add Filter, and we need to come over here and add in a very specific filter. And how I decided to do this is I came over here and added a brand new parameter that's called retrieve, which basically serves as our filter, because if this parameter actually has the word yes inside it, then that means we have already retrieved it and our automation is not going to go and retrieve it again. But if it is empty, just like it is over here, that means that we have not retrieved this parameter and our automation is going to go and retrieve it. So how we can set this as a filter is by coming back over to N8N, coming over here and selecting that parameter that is called retrieved, and then over here in the value, let me turn this into an expression, and we need to type this, which basically means that if this value is empty, then to actually go and retrieve that specific line. If it is not, then to not go and retrieve it. So if I execute the step again, you will see that this will only retrieve 2 items, while otherwise it would retrieve 7. So now that we successfully managed to retrieve only the invoices that we actually want, which are the invoices of the past week, then what we need to do is come over here and update this value so we don't retrieve them again in the next week. So to do that, I will come over here and I will search for Google Sheets, and then I will come over here and select Update Row in Sheet. Then I will again select my Google Sheets credentials, and then I will come over here, select the Google Sheet, and I will also select the sheet number. And then I simply need to define the column to match the sum, I will actually choose the invoice ID since I think it's the simplest one to use. So I will take in the invoice ID, drag and drop it over here, and then all I need to do is to simply scroll all the way down to where I have the retrieved parameter and simply input the word yes. So now if I execute this is going to input the word yes inside the columns that were retrieved, and we can also see that it did that if we come back in our Google Sheet over here. It inputted the word yes over here and over here. So now that we have done that and we have successfully managed to sort out which rows from the Google Sheet we need to retrieve, what is left is to feed these rows into an AI model in order for it to be able to make the analysis that we want. So to do that, I will come over here and I will first add in an aggregate node, and the reason I'm choosing to use an aggregate node is because, as you can see, we have two items over here, which means that if we give these two items, then the AI model is going to give us two separate responses, which is something that we don't want. We want the LLM to analyze all the data that we have inside the Google Sheet over here and give us only one response that includes insights from all of our invoices, from all the invoices that we have over here. So to do that, I'll come over here and change this to all item data into a single list, and then if I execute the step, you can see that this basically inputs all the data inside only one item over here. But as you can see right now, we have two items over here, which means that if we feed these two items into an AI model, then this is going to give us two separate responses, which is not what we want. So to circumvent that, what we're going to do is we're going to bring this up over here, and then we're going to create a new branch where we're going to add in an aggregate node. And what an aggregate node enables us to do is basically take these two items and make them into one. And how we're able to do that is by coming over here and selecting all item data into a single list, and then simply coming over here and clicking on execute step. And boom, as you can see, this gives us this output, and as you can see over here, we only have one item, which is exactly what we wanted. So now all we have to do is to feed in this data into an AI model, and specifically I will come over here and I will actually choose to use an AI agent. Now the first thing that we need to do is to come over here and change this from connect to chat trigger node to define below, and then over here we basically need to tell our AI agent exactly what we want it to do. So I will come over here and type, I want you to take all this info that I have inside my CRM for all the transactions that I have done in my business, and what I want you to do is analyze them and give me some meaningful insights. After you're done creating the insights, what I want you to do is to also compare them with the previous insights that you had given me in the previous weeks, because we're also going to give it memory so it remembers the previous insights that it gave you. And then I say whether my business is growing, and then I say here is all the information, and then what I did is I basically took in this data column, drag and dropped over here, and I also stringified, as you can see, so the AI agent is able to view all this information, and then I say give me the actual analysis, nothing else. And I also told it to ignore the retrieved parameter completely since it doesn't add in anything to the analysis. Now we can close this off and we need to come over here and add in an AI model. For this example, I will come over here and I will select OpenAI, and I will select GPT 4.1 mini. Then I will also come over here and give it access to some simple memory, so it actually remembers our past conversations. So I will come over here and change this to define below, and then over here in the key I will input a random value, let's say 20, and for the context window I will make this very long, let's say 1000, so it remembers 1000 of our past conversations. And now if I close this off, the specific reason I choose to use an AI agent and not an LLM model is because I want to come over here and give it access to the think tool, because what the think tool enables us to do is to basically tell the agent to pause, take a moment, and rethink about the response that it's going to give us, which indeed makes it give us a better end result. So now that we finished setting up our AI agent, all we have to do is to simply come over here and execute it, and as you can see it is executing right now, and boom, as you can see it just finished executing. And if I actually open this up, we can see that we have the analysis from the insights that we got from our invoices over here, which is exactly what we wanted. Now what we can do is to actually save this inside a Google Doc, for example, so then we can go and access it whenever we want. So to do that, I will actually come over here and copy these two nodes from the previous workflow that we built, and then I will simply come over here and paste them in, so I do not have to build them from scratch again. And the only change I'm going to make is inside this created document, I will basically change the name of the document and I will call it something like analysis. And then over here in the updated document, I will also open this up. I will leave this exactly as it is. And over here in the text, I will simply delete this, take the AI agent's output and simply drag and drop it over here. So now if I execute both of these, you will see that this is going to create a document, and it is also going to insert the analysis that we did inside the document, as you can see over here. So now we can basically do whatever we want with this. We can email it to us, we can upload it over to Google Drive, but since I think emailing it is more of a practical step, I will come over here and I will choose to email this. So I will simply come over here, search for Gmail, and then select send a message. Then I will select my Gmail credentials. Then over here on 2 I will input my personal email. Obviously, you need to input the email of the accountant over here. For the subject, I will say analysis. Then I will turn this into text, and for the message, I will actually say, here is the analysis document. And what I'm going to do is I will simply input this, which is basically the starting part of the Google Docs URL. And then I will simply take in the document ID, which is the last part of the Google Docs URL, and drag and drop it over here. And I will also come over here and append the N8N attribution, which means that if I come over here and execute the step, you can see that this did send successfully. And if I go over in my Gmail, you can see that we do in fact have this email, which also includes the exact Google document that we just generated, which is exactly what we wanted. Now if you want access to the JSON for this whole automation, along with all the lovable prompts that we used to build this front-end interface, you can click the link in my description and find them inside free school community. And if you want to learn how you can sell automations like this, you can click the link in my description and come and check out my paid school community, in which I have a full cold email course, which is the exact methodology that I would use to sell this system to accountants. First, I would go and find leads with the exact methodology that I show you how to do inside the school, and then I would set up a cold email campaign instantly using the email templates that I have exclusively inside the community. And then once I got some responses, I would also do some back and forth with the clients, and I also tell you exactly how you can do that. And then I would set up a discovery call where I would discover the system that I want, which probably would be a very similar system to the one that we built, and then I would close them on that call. So if you want the step-by-step guide that shows you exactly how you can do this, make sure you click the link in the description and you come and join my ASAS Builders community, and I will be waiting for you inside. But also YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this video, in which I built a $1 million app using just Lovable and N8N. So make sure you go and watch that next. And I will see you over there.